Hello and welcome to this actually very exciting episode of the MediaTech Podcast. We are here with Lee Shapiro. How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
So you are a screenwriter.
Correct.
And an instructor.
I wannabe still, but yeah.
Whatever. We'll get into that.
Every screenwriter is still a wannabe. We're only one sale away from not being a screenwriter again.
I bet you Aaron Sorkin probably still says that.
Maybe.
And you are, according to your Wikipedia page, a computer animator. I didn't know that.
Used to be.
Used to be. That's cool.
4 years, 5 years.
And you have an extensive education history as well.
Oh,
You've been teaching for quite a while.
Since about 2000.
2000? That's cool. Wow. Almost 20 years.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
When you put it that way, yeah, it's like makes me feel old.
That's like a quarter of your life. So.
I know. It's like, wow. Yeah. And I didn't intend to go into teaching, but it kind of came to me.
That's cool. So, and you're from Florida, right?
I'm from Texas.
From Texas, moved
Lived
to Florida.
half my life in Florida, half of it here.
Gotcha. So we are talking to Lee today. We're going to learn a little bit about him and his background as a screenwriter primarily, but also we're going to learn about his script, Batman DarKnight, which was an official script through Warner Brothers.
Awkwardly titled, according to every reviewer ever.
Except for The Dark Knight was a movie, so that's kind of weird.
Except that it had 2 words and ours was one, and to this day I almost regret making it 1 word. But yeah.
Let's learn a little bit about you from a screenwriter's perspective first, before we go into the Batman script. Okay.
Well, screenwriting is one of those things that kind of came to me. I didn't go after it. I always knew I wanted to be a filmmaker. I kind of knew I wanted to be an animator. That was like I don't know, that was a side thing that came out of filmmaking.
Originally 2D or?
All 2D. Yeah. There's something about drawing, like putting pen to paper or paint to cells or however you want to say it, that I can do for lengths of period at a time without getting bored versus staring at a computer screen.
I don't think I've ever seen any art from you before.
Probably not.
Yeah.
No, probably
cool.
not. But yeah, it's so much easier to just, I could draw and draw and draw and draw. And I used to draw growing up. That's all I ever did was draw. So that I can do for hours without getting bored. But like staring at a computer screen, it burns you out. At least to me, it burns you out so quick. And so that's why I did it for 4 or 5 years. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And there was no cell animation jobs that were really like readily available.
Right.
But the screenwriting came about because the school I went to for college, University of Central Florida, at that time they had 2 tracks. And one of them was motion picture production. The other one was animation. So the animation students had to take certain starter film classes, and one of them was screenwriting. And I didn't know anything about screenwriting at that time. So I fell in love with it just because of that one class. And so I signed up. You could take, what do they call it? Electives, right? Following semesters, you can sign up for random classes. And so I went in and said, I'm going to take screenwriting too, even though I didn't have to, because I got the prerequisites out of the way. I loved it. And like my work, was quickly identified, quickly recognized by the teacher and other people. And I'm like, maybe there's something to this. I got away from it for a while after I graduated because I became an animator. But then I had the opportunity to jump back into it with The Tick, the animated series on Fox. And that kind of just opened the door to
that's a pretty big opportunity for someone that hadn't been actively looking for a career in screenwriting, right? Like, how did that fall into place?
Well, one, it was just because I watched the show and I loved it. Like, it just instantly spoke to me from like episode 1. I was just like, I could do this. Like, I could write for this show because I have the same level of humor. It was a very dry kind of wit. And that's why I don't think it lasted on Saturday morning cartoons, because it wasn't that, flashy, in your face kids crap. It was like it was a little bit more sophisticated. And I was like, this is really good. And plus it had a background in comic books, which I had. And it happened to be, I was a little bit lucky because my roommate at the time was an entertainment attorney.
Oh, cool.
So she could represent me. So she was able to represent my work and get it into the hands of the creators of the show. Cool. And so they liked it. And I had a long phone call with them, and they said, here's how we'd like you to tailor your future episodes. This is the direction the show, this direction the show is heading into. And I did, but then it got canceled, of course. Like I said, it was not long for Fox, unfortunately.
It's a show now, isn't it?
It was on Amazon. It was just an Amazon original last year before last, but it's off again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's never lasted long on TV. The comics are still, they come and go, but the shows have been always, canceled quickly.
So following the Tick, did you go back into computer animation, or did you?
I was still doing it. So those were happening simultaneously.
Oh, cool.
So I was, at work animating and at home writing.
Gotcha. And what came next after the Tick?
What did come next? I think the next thing was a feature film. I mean, I started getting little side jobs. I don't remember where it came year-wise, but I remember I got hired by the Orlando Predators. They were an arena football team. I don't even know if that's still going on anymore.
No, it closed down.
Yeah, so when that was first starting, they hired me to write their commercials for them.
Well, that's cool.
So I wrote like all their, I'll say all their commercials, the first like 2 or 3 of their commercials for them. And I don't remember what else exactly came, small potatoes out of that, but I wanted to jump into features. And so the first thing I did on my own was adapt H.G. Wells's The War of the Worlds.
Oh, wow.
Because it was, this is before the Tom Cruise one, or the Spielberg one came out. In fact, I still claim a little responsibility for them even making that movie at all, because nobody was thinking about that book again. The last time it had been made to a movie was 1953. And so I wanted to update it, and no one had actually done the book. It had been updated for the 50s, and the book could take place in the 1890s. Oh. And so what I wanted to do is like the 100-year anniversary, the book was actually coming up. And I was like, if I can get this in, they could do a movie for the 100th anniversary of the novel.
That's cool.
And so I took it to everybody, but nobody seemed to be interested in doing it.
Was your script based in when the book was?
And
wow, that would be cool.
And that's what made it different, because it was science fiction meets Elizabethan, Victorian England.
Yeah.
And like it was something that had never really been seen before.
Wow, that's cool. Did that go anywhere? I guess
said, the closest it came, the funny thing is the closest it came was at the Kennedy Marshall Company, which is Spielberg's producers. They loved the idea. And of course, who ended up doing it? Spielberg. And so that's why I'm saying I think I put the germ of the idea into their head, but they obviously didn't want to do the 1890s. They wanted to update it for the
Man, I like that
the
movie,
2000.
but it sounds like it would have been cooler.
I think it would have been. I think it would have been.
And so, are we close to the Batman script, or how much between there and
there'd be at least one more feature written before Batman, and that was the first time I worked with a writing partner. Well, not first time on a feature. I worked with a writing partner.
Same writing partner as Batman?
Yes. So we wrote something called From the Ashes, which was actually still my favorite script, I would say. Not my funnest script to write. Batman was the probably the most fun, but I think the best, the most creative, the most artistic script. It's also the one that's won the most awards. It was about blindness, like 90% of the world going blind overnight.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar, right? Because that's another concept that after we pitched it all around Hollywood, and they said no. Mostly, I will say, they said no to the protagonist because he was a small boy. And they could not see marketing a whole movie around like a 9-year-old boy.
Now it's Jason Momoa, but
right. See, now we have Stranger Things and things like that. They're like, that's all they do. It's like it works. And we kept trying to convince them because, at the time, this is the time when Haley Joel Osment was, really popular. We're like, you can carry a whole movie on the strength of a really good child actor.
Right.
But they didn't want to do it. They're like, no, it needs to be an adult. And we were willing to compromise on a whole bunch of things in the script. Like the location was also different. It was set in Atlanta, Georgia, which of course now is, Walking Dead. It's like no one was doing outside LA and New York. No one was doing other major metropolitan cities except for Chicago. No one was doing other major metropolitan cities for their settings. And so we set it all around like the South. It goes from Atlanta, Georgia to Biltmore, North Carolina.
Oh, that's cool.
And, but see, now I feel like because of movies that have taken blindness, like was it Bird Box?
Yeah.
It's not really blindness, but not being able to see, and Quiet Place, and then the movie called Blindness, which I say a pun no one's ever seen.
And what is that new Apple series?
Oh yeah,
referred to?
And then that one also, I don't remember the name of it, but every time something comes out, I'm just like, okay, this script is getting deader and deader because I can't bring it out again because everyone think I just copied them.
Right.
But like this is back in 1997.
Oh
right?
wow,
1998.
That's cool. I didn't realize it was that early.
Yeah, it's way before any of that stuff. But unfortunately, when you're an unknown writer and you have a high concept, a lot of times they're not gonna do it. If if you are a Alan Sorkin or whatever, and you can come in with anything, they'll be like, oh yeah, they'll buy a napkin if you write the word hello on it. But it's harder to get stuff like that because they don't want to take chances and stuff like that. Making a kid led movie for mainstream audiences, they're not going to take that kind of chance
That's
at
so
that
interesting.
time.
Yeah. Did that enter your mind at all to do something more conservative?
We really wrestled with the idea of changing if that was the only drawback to getting it sold was him. I don't think that was the only thing, but if that was the only drawback to getting it sold was changing the protagonist to older, we really wrestled with it. But the problem is it completely changed the theme. It wasn't just like a matter of switching it out. I mean, like we would have changed it to a girl or change the ethnicity or change the location. Doesn't have to be Atlanta. All that stuff we were willing to change, but we didn't want to change the age.
Yeah.
Just because it was like, how do you treat this disaster through the eyes of a child? An adult can deal with it easier, but how's a child deal with it when they're separated from their parents when this happens?
That's so cool.
And they have to enter into the big city to find their parents. And, basically it's not zombies. It's just regular people who can't see.
Interesting. Is that script available anywhere?
It's not I don't think it's online or anything. I mean, I'm actually rewriting it now, trying to see if I can pull it away from some of these things that have come out. I'm not having trouble kind of doing that. Especially when Quiet Place came out, because I was going to switch it to deafness. And then Quiet Place came out, and I'm like, okay, can't do that now. And so I'm still just tooling with it a little bit to enter in a few more contests.
That's
Because
cool.
it's gotten me other work, but it itself has not been able to go anywhere because
Interesting.
of all those other things.
So we'll get to Batman in a second, but I want to keep talking about that because as a new writer, presumably someone that could use a large influx of cash at the time, especially, that must have been a difficult decision, to not give in to what the producers or whoever you're trying to sell it to might want creatively, and you're leaving what I guess would be a pretty big check on the table, right? For that reason,
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah,
potentially. Like I said, I don't think that would have been the only thing they would have given as a reason to say no to it. That was their main reason. It seemed like that most people had. But I remember. So Shane Black, I remember sitting in a panel discussion with him, and something that he said, this is way back, like I said, in the 90s, just stuck with me. Was he said, as a writer, not that it's really profound, but pick your battles. We hear that a lot. But what he said is they're going to ask for a lot of changes. Most of them you need to be agreeable to, but you've got to pick the one or two that you are willing to say no to, and they'll respect that.
Interesting.
And so with that script, like I said, we were willing to change a lot of it. But that was that was kind of our line in the sand. It's just the age is just, it really matters that this is a child and not an adult dealing with this. It's just not as frightening, I don't think, as an adult as it would be for a 9-year-old boy separating from his parents. And so, it was hard to walk away from. Thankfully, again, that both of us had other jobs because we're not full-time writers getting paid for this,
right,
as a regular career yet. So it didn't hurt financially.
So I'm sure the question comes up, what kind, the check that you left on the table, potentially, what for a first-time writer, what can that be expected?
Well, if you go by Writers Guild minimums, we're talking at that time you've been talking probably about $65,000
for the script, or so that would be divided between the two writing partners. Wow.
Right. So
that's a life-changing amount of money.
That's a year salary.
Yeah,
right there between us. But if you're talking about average, we're talking about low six figures.
Yeah. So
more than likely, it would have been paid in the low hundreds of thousands.
Wow, that's really admirable that y'all decided not to change that. That's cool.
It's hard. It's a hard decision, but I like the script the way it is. I'm still happy with it
for sure.
And I will say, to some degree, I feel vindicated because the script that came out, or the movie that came out based on it, called Blindness, failed. It failed miserably, and it was all adults, and it just had no heart. There was no heart to it. It was just,
So are studios allowed to, if they're pitched a script, and in your case, you're not going to change what they want to change? Are they allowed to be okay, cool, we'll just take the premise and
yes,
they're allowed to do that without
ideas cannot be protected?
Interesting.
So when I my pitch always started with, imagine 90% of the world going blind overnight. You're the one left with your eyesight.
Yeah,
it's a great, boom. Your mind goes, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. What would I do? It's a great way to start a pitch because it gets people thinking. So that's called high concept. That, what I just said, anyone could do. It's not I can't have that. So anyone can take that and run with it.
That sucks.
They can't take my protagonist and my specific plot and they can't take all of that, but they can take that idea,
and
run with it.
So let's talk about Batman. So how did that happen?
That would be the next script. Yeah.
So that's, I mean, how did you get approached to write a protected property like that?
I didn't get approached for that one. I don't know if I would say blame or thank Joel Schumacher for this, because Batman and Robin had come out. I'm sorry, let's back up a minute. Batman Forever had come out. I don't remember what year right now, which was okay. It wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
It was the highest grossing of the 3 Batman films at the time.
And the first one was obviously the best one, right? Like that people remember.
I like the second one the best, but most people, prefer the first one. But the second one's my favorite.
These are the
personally.
Keaton.
Yeah, the
films, right?
first two are the Keaton, and the third one is Val Kilmer.
Gotcha.
A lot of people forget that one.
Yeah.
It wasn't horrible, but it was completely different from 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it came out, like I said, financially it did the best of all 3.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who wrote that, I don't remember their first name, but it's Bachelors is their last name. Lee Batchelor and Janet Batchelor, I think. The Bachelors, they're a married couple. They wrote that one. And I had a class with them. They actually taught a class that I took. And I got to spend a lot of time with them and talking about that. And they talked about their experience. And
Like at UCF or just another
no,
class
it
you
was
took
just
somewhere?
it was a separate, just
Gotcha.
writing kind of camp thing. And they were very inspiring. And I remember them talking about like their experience writing that. And I got to read their script versus, it's one of the first times I ever read a script versus the movie and saw how much of a difference there was.
Oh, cool.
And they even said, like, when they were invited to the premiere, they're sitting there watching scenes and going, did we write that? Did we write that? Did we write that? And they're like, there's just so many things that they were just surprised to see on the screen that were not in their script. And so, like I said, that kind of passed. And I had that relationship with them. Then Batman and Robin came out, and I knew just from the trailers, I had no desire to see the movie. Even though I love Batman, I was like, and I told my writing partner, I said, I'm not going to go see this. The trailers look so terrible. I have no desire to even pay money, to support that. And he said, you will see it. And I said, no, I won't. And I never did. I have since, but it's because he made me on videotape, but I never saw it in the theater. I was so disgusted with literally just even starting the videotape, the first 10 minutes, I was so disgusted with it. I said to him, you and I can do better than this. We can do so much better than this. And on our next trip out we came up with an idea, and we literally, no, I'm sorry, I take that back. We were on a trip to California to pitch the blindness movie, actually, the From the Ashes. We were at Warner Brothers. We happened to be talking to the executive at the time that was in charge of Batman. I think his name was Jeff Robinoff. I don't know if I remember that exactly or not, but he was like the guy who was in charge of the Batman franchise for Warner Brothers at the time. And he asked us during the meeting after we pitched From the Ashes, and he knew I wrote the tick. He said, well, y'all got, I have a random question for y'all. Batman and Robin just came out. And it's, it's like financially it's doing okay, but critically it's not. Like, we think this is going to be the end of the franchise. What would y'all do? What would y'all do?
Wow.
What would y'all do if if you were to do something with it? And we just kind of off the cuff, we just like pitched. We said, well, what if you did this length of time where Batman, because he's been kind of overused in the movies, he feels like he's just a pawn of the police department, or he's just like on call anytime they need him for anything. He just disappears again. He just disappears, and he disappears for so long that everyone thinks he was just a myth to begin with. They're like,
Wow.
was he really? He just kind of goes back to that first movie where they didn't even know if he was a man or a monster. It was just like a thing in the shadows. So what if that amount of time has passed, and that's how you start it, with him like deciding if he even wants to come back out and do what he does anymore. And they said, he's like, I like that idea. He said, but what would you do for like villains? What'd you antagonists? And I said, I would do Scarecrow, because Scarecrow is like who hasn't been dealt with yet, and he's a great foil for him in terms of like the fear.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can start doing some fear themes about the things that Bruce Wayne / Batman is scared of when it comes to doing what he does, and
Right.
he can like amplify those. And he really, really liked that idea, and he said, "How soon can you get me that script?" And we're like, we didn't know. We stared at each other. We didn't expect. We just thought we were having a conversation. And we just kind of like, 2 months? And they're like, okay.
2 months.
And then we did. It turned out we did. That's the quickest we've ever turned something out.
Holy
so we
crap.
turned out, and the thing that we added, that we thought was kind of like the linchpin, right? The killing blow was we added Man-Bat.
Right.
And that's, I think to date, still something that has not been seen in any live action incarnation.
Because in your script, people start thinking that Man-Bat was Batman, right?
So somebody gets inadvertently turned into Man-Bat and goes out and starts having like a bloodlust. They're like, is this Batman returned with like a vengeance? Is he like a true vigilante now where he's just like slaughtering people?
So did you guys get that idea just off the cuff in that meeting? Or like, I guess you guys had already been discussing how you would do it different.
That part I told you came out of the meeting.
Yeah.
Man-Bat, I don't remember where Man-Bat came from.
I mean, but like the whole premise that he had. Well, that came in that
came
meeting.
in the meeting.
Wow.
That just came in the meeting.
So what was that feeling? Was that the first time like an executive had asked you, what would you do with this huge property? Like that must have been scary to answer.
It was scary. Yeah. Well, like I said, we didn't even think about it because we thought we were just having a conversation.
Yeah.
We thought we're done with the pitch for the movie we came for. And now we're just, shooting the breeze.
Yeah.
With someone who's into movies like we are. So it didn't feel, it didn't feel like, hey, this is your job moment. What are you going to do? And we just talked.
So what was that reaction when he said, when can I have a script?
That's when we like froze. Because then that's when we were just like, and that's when we looked at each other and we're like, I don't know what answer to give. How long will it take us?
Because 2 months seems short.
It is short.
Yeah.
It is short, but like I say, it was fun, and so it was easy to write. It almost wrote itself.
Was that full-time work for 2 months?
Full-time, if you mean a couple of days each week, yes. Not like every day, but like every weekend, definitely, and then maybe an extra day or two of the weekdays, yes.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So what was the writing process for that like?
I'm trying to remember that on that one, how we divided up the work. I remember our last work together, exactly how we divided it, but that one, I feel like we split it in half. I'm trying to remember exactly how we divided up the work in that, but usually, I'll tell you usually the way we work, my writing partner is much faster than I am.
And you still work with him?
Not directly. Like he's still in Florida. So we still have a good relationship and everything, but no, we don't actually have a working relationship anymore. Usually the way we work is he's very fast. Like he can turn out scripts in a weekend. But he's not the greatest rewriter. So what he'll do is, like I'll say, we'll brainstorm together. We'll come up with ideas, and I'll just give him, say, go, right? And he writes. Then he gives me the script, and I hammer it. I I make all the changes. Then I give that back to him, and he sees what he likes and doesn't like, and he says no, yes, makes changes, and then we come together and we get a first draft, basically that way.
And so obviously there's a lot of similarities from that to what ended up getting produced later on.
I wouldn't say a lot. There's probably maybe 3.
In that premise, at least.
Scarecrow being the biggest premise to come out of it.
And then Dark Knight Rises, the whole premise is similar.
Yes. Him coming out of retirement. So so over the 3 new Nolan movies, yes. Except for maybe the middle one.
Yeah.
The name. The only thing it changed was the name. But like the first one had some actual scenes from our script.
Wow.
And the last one just had that idea of him going back into nothingness for a while.
So I guess the reason that it didn't move forward was because they just nixed that.
We are not sure why it didn't move forward, because they actually did hire somebody right before us, and that was I cannot remember his name off the top of my head, but he wrote one called Batman Triumphant, and it brought the Joker back as a cameo. I remember that. I don't know how long they considered his script. I'm trying to remember his name. Mark Protosevich. There it is. Mark Protosevich. They hired him before us. Then they hired us. Ours, we were told, was under consideration for the longest of any of the new scripts, which made us feel really good. After us, they hired Darren Aronofsky and Frank Miller, and they wrote one after us, and theirs was nixed really fast, which made us feel even better. Yeah. And at that point, that's when they kind of gave up on the whole sequel idea. They kind of said, we don't want to go a sequel, and they shut down the franchise. Yeah. And they shut down because originally it was going to be Joel Schumacher. He was still under legal contract to direct another movie. Gotcha. And they finally, I think they expired that. That's what they did. They're just kind of like, okay, we're not going forward with this franchise anymore. Like in that incarnation. So then they waited and went the way a lot of movies did and went prequel. Yeah. Or retelling.
And that was
remakes.
A number of years between that and Nolan, right?
It was a lot, yeah.
Interesting. So so let's talk about the similarities and how that kind of morphed. Another question, I mean, obviously, so there were sines that were pulled.
At least one I can think of almost verbatim.
In Batman Begins, right? Which one is that?
It's a scene where, I can't remember the character's name, but the Scarecrow attacks the female main main character, his girlfriend,
not
quote unquote.
Gyllenhaal, but the one that played her
Same
before.
character,
same
different
character.
actresses, but same character. I can't remember the character's name in the movie, but where he attacks her on the elevator, like she sees him putting the drugs in the water, and she runs down the hall and gets in the elevator, and he sprays her. That is almost exactly what happens in our script, except it happens to Bruce Wayne.
So how do you think that happens? Like, do you think it just stays in the mind of these executives?
Either that. That's what I tend to give it. I think that people read something, they forget that they read something.
Yeah.
And it's like, whatever, it pops in there. Usually, I don't blame the writers, because usually they don't read past incarnations.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, they don't read past incarnations. And so I know I wouldn't. Like, I don't want to see I want to start fresh. So if I read something else, it will be stuck in my head.
Yeah.
So usually readers don't read the past scripts. So I don't think they did anything. So yeah, I think it's probably either a producer or the person in charge of the franchise or somebody remembered that scene. Or so they either said directly, I like that scene, I like a scene like that, put it in there, or it was just like in notes. They didn't remember why.
Interesting, because that seems to happen a lot, actually. The more I read about screenwriting and all that,
it happens quite a bit.
And so is that
the logo also is huge?
Really?
We developed that logo.
Oh.
That logo, that new Batman Begins logo, that was ours.
So is any of that protectable property?
The funny thing, you should ask that. I actually had a lawyer tell me it was. They said you could fight and win the rights to this because you have proof that you developed that logo when you're pitching your stuff. But then he asked a very important question to me. He said, tell me the classic Batman logo that you can think of, the Tim Burton one with the yellow.
Yeah.
He said, tell me who developed that logo. And I'm like, I don't know. And he said, exactly. He said, so you can win this fight and then lose the entire thing. So you can win, you can get rights to the logo and get whatever money,
You're good.
whatever money comes out of it. But then they'll probably never work with you again.
Yeah, that's the thing. You're alienating a
Hollywood
huge...
probably will not work with you again because you fought them.
Man, that sucks.
And I said it's not worth it because who does know who
worth it.
Who knows who developed the logo?
Yeah, I mean,
It's
for a
not worth
check,
it.
and then you're never gonna work for.
Right. So I didn't pursue it. It's not worth it.
Interesting. And so, like I said, the whole premise was basically used for the Dark Knight Rises. Obviously, the story, no.
Right.
But the premise was
the basic premise, of him going in retirement. But I will say that's not even original to us. I mean, that's
gotcha.
Because Frank Miller, I feel worse for Frank Miller, not so much Darren Aronofsky, but Frank Miller than I did for us, because the script that he wrote, or he and Darren Aronofsky wrote, was called The Dark Knight Returns, I believe. I don't remember the exact name of it. And a lot of that, and also, I don't know if there's another one called Batman Year One, and maybe you've read that. It's a graphic novel that Frank Miller wrote. It's called Batman Year One, and they also made an animated movie about the same thing. That is almost entirely Batman Begins.
Oh,
so they pulled a lot of that. That whole movie is almost Frank Miller's Batman Year One.
Gotcha.
So very little of it is our concept.
Yeah.
So I don't feel as bad for us. And again, I'm actually okay with it because I think it's cool that even some of our stuff made it on.
Yeah, that's got to be so.
Because again, we were hired by them. Our script didn't get made, but we were hired by Warner Brothers. So it's still, to me, it's like it's a win.
For sure. That's got to be really cool to see it. So definitely we could do many more podcasts talking about other screenwriting things, but a couple more questions. So first, where can people read that script if they're interested?
I believe my writing partner has put it for sale on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So it is actually something you can buy bound on Amazon for sale. Other than that, I guess, I don't know, there may be copies of it floating around for free online. I don't know. But I know it's available online.
It's called Amazon. Batman Dark Knight, one word.
One word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Capital K in the middle.
That's cool.
I regret that every day now. I know, you want to know why I did it?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's so stupid. It's such a stupid idea. I can't believe my writing partner agreed to it. So there hadn't been a movie called Dark Knight first at that point. So we knew we wanted to kind of use that subtitle, The Dark Knight, for one. But there was another made-for-TV movie that came out in the either 70s or 80s, I don't remember when, called The Dark Knight of the Scarecrow.
Oh, gotcha.
And we wanted to kind of mesh the two, even though no one had ever heard of the TV movie. It was like, because ours had the Scarecrow in it, we wanted to kind of put that in there. And we just thought, like, from a logo standpoint, like title standpoint, it would look cool if like they shared the K. It was dumb. I was thinking like an animator and not a screenwriter.
I don't think it's bad.
It was. People weren't even sure how to pronounce it sometimes.
Really?
They're like, so it was. here's a lesson. Here's a lesson I learned from that and from our next script after that. If at the title people are already confused, change it.
Interesting.
That's a stumbling block.
Gotcha.
It's a major stumbling block. So yeah, if the title's throwing them off, change the title.
Gotcha.
You don't want any stumbling blocks at all.
That's really good advice. So last question, we'll get into more of your scripts, I'm sure, in future podcasts and talk more about that. But so as someone that went through the film program at MediaTech and has gotten a lot of marketing and advertising jobs and hopefully has a future in some form in film, I can kind of see the road, right? If like I want to be a director, even if it's an independent thing, like I could kind of see the path to do that, or a DP or whatever. Screenwriting is not something that I can see a path to that's clear to me. And I'm not personally very good at it, but I can imagine that that's got to be hard for someone that even is good at it. Like that seems like the career path to become a screenwriter is a little bit more ambiguous than some of the other, above the line jobs. What advice would you have to people or students that are interested in screenwriting but just have no idea where to start?
Now, I would say the opposite.
Really?
See, I would say it's easier to become a screenwriter than a director, maybe not so much a producer, but like a director, producer, or DP, or any of those above the line jobs. The reason is because what do you need to do it? Right?
Yeah.
Pen and paper.
Right.
I mean, really? And of course talent, but you don't need any gear and you can do it on your own. And anytime you want to do it, it doesn't have to be done anywhere specifically in the world. All you really have to do is have a good representation, like good agent or something if you can't live in LA or New York, have good representation there. But there's so many avenues in with it. I mean, especially now, even compared to when I started, but you've got, was it Film Freeway? I don't know if you've ever heard of that website, filmfreeway.com, which another version of it's called withoutabox.com. But
I've heard it Without a Box.
Film Freeway is better. And it's like, it's an inside track to all contests and film festivals where you can enter your script. They have almost all of them have screenplay contest. If it even places, people notice that. Mm-hmm. That's a check mark in your column and people will come to you.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, a lot of those, the awards are representation. Like that's what you win. Or we will, look at your script for producing. Plus there's script clearinghouses like, I can't remember the name of it right now. It used to be called Script Pimp, but they've changed the name of it because everyone hated that name.
Yeah, it's a horrible name.
It stood for Pipeline into Motion Pictures. But everyone's like, it's called Script Pimp. And it's like, and everyone hated it. So they changed it. I don't remember their new name now, but they were a clearinghouse where you could, very cheaply, some of them are free. You submit your script and people read it, and if it gets enough like check marks, then they look at it for taking it to producers.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So there's lots of avenues in for screenwriters.
Kind of like the independent blacklist, I guess.
Right. Yeah, like the blacklist too. Yeah. So that's another way in. But that's just movies.
Yeah.
So TV and smaller stuff is even easier because there's a lot more viability. There's a lot more content and time to fill.
Right.
So it's easier to sell a TV script, or you could write a novel and then keep the film rights to it. If the novel does any kind of success at all, someone will start wanting to turn it into a movie or TV series. So, but they have to come to you because you own the film rights to it. I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of more inroads to me that for me, I don't know how I'd be a director.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a harder ladder to climb.
For sure.
Than just sitting down and writing anytime I want to in my room.
That's cool. And there's plenty of free screenwriting applications too that they can just use on a laptop, Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Again, I'm sure we'll have you again.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
And it's great whenever I'm with an instructor because I can ask them to tell people why they should check out MediaTech.
Check out MediaTech because we are where it's at in terms of the film industry. We have real, like myself, we have real world working instructors that bring their current knowledge into the classroom and give you the skinny on how to break in yourself.
Awesome. And the facilities here are great. You see a very pleasant looking wall behind us, but behind the cameras is one of the several studios they have here for the recording arts program. They also have tracks for, again, obviously film, but also computer animation, mobile app development, now acting and makeup, which is super cool. And they've got campuses in Dallas and Houston. Schedule a free tour if you're interested at mediatek.edu, and we'll see you again next week with another podcast. Thank you, guys.
Bye.